Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and today I'm talking to Janine, who found that not eating sugar and practicing intermittent fasting just makes her feel free. And I totally get that because it's pretty much the same for me, and it may be the same for you. We'll get into our chat in just a moment. And before we do, I'd like to invite you over to my website, aftersugarclub.com, to download your simple guide to getting more energy with less sugar. Just go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the tab Simple Guide. You can also surf around and make the most of all the free resources on the website, like the videos about what to eat, what to buy at the grocery store that doesn't have added sugars, and also about the importance of gut health. Because when you look after your gut health by cutting out sugar and adding in real probiotic foods and drinks, then that makes a huge difference to your general health and well-being. Try it and see. I also teach how to make your own fermented foods and drinks inside of the After Sugar Club, and you can check out everything that's in there by going to aftersugarclub.com and pressing on the green button, Join the Club. You can also come say hi on my Facebook page, Life After Sugar, on my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where I post pictures of what I eat and what I do and, basically Instagram stuff so that you can see that it is totally possible to live a happy, fun, joyful life even when you don't eat sugar. And you can find me on Clubhouse, in the Life After Sugar Club, as well as on LinkedIn. All right, here's my chat with Janine. So, thank you very much for being with me, Janine. And can you tell us a little bit about what your life was like when you were still consuming sugar?
Sure. I think my life was full of guilt because I'd read enough things and knew enough things to know that sugar is not good for us, that it causes, it feeds cancer, that it causes inflammation, that you're more likely to get sick. But I really, really like it. And it really made me happy to eat it. So I did a lot of things like, like the keto diet. Not anything against it, but I felt like it promotes eating fake sugars. And I did a diet called Trim Healthy Mama for a long time, and they have their own whole assortment of stevias and xylitols and all this stuff. And so I spent a lot of time recreating foods with those, telling myself they were delicious, and finding that really I just missed the real thing. There were many years that I just changed to like Rapadura sugar or Muscovado, which have a little bit more, at least some not nutrients, but minerals and things. So I did and didn't buy anything that was commercially made. So at least all the sweets I were making were my own. And when I used those, I felt like I was very healthy. I stayed at a healthy weight till I hit 40. And that's when I really started going, well, I shouldn't be eating sugar. I know that, but I'll try all these other ones and make fake muffins and fake things out of not really flour and not really sugar. And so my life was kind of bland. So I think now I just notice that food tastes good when you eat the real stuff and not try to make something taste like it should be. Just stop eating that thing altogether.
Oh, very wise. So have you found that your taste buds have changed?
Maybe a little. I want to try the experiment of eating something sugary to see if it really is a sweet, but then I know I won't stop, so I'm not going to. But I do know that like dried mangoes are my favorite food now, and I think that they're blissfully sweet. And I feel like I can't say for sure that my taste buds have changed. I like to say that, but this week I've been craving pizza and nachos all week. That's all I wanted. It's not all I've eaten, but it's all I've wanted. So I'm like, when am I going to get over that to where I just want meat and vegetables and healthy foods, but not there yet.
So you're still experiencing some cravings, not necessarily for sweet things, but as you were mentioning, for sort of industrially prepared, like crunchy
Yeah.
junk food, let's call it. And what do you do when you're in the middle of these cravings? You say you don't actually eat those things, but how can you stop yourself?
Well, don't always. I do allow myself, I try to allow myself, I can eat one day a week, something that's really cheesy and gooey. So one day a week. Um, but it's just a matter of time. So you wait 15 minutes and typically the craving is gone. It might come back another hour later, but you wait 15 minutes and it's gone. And yesterday was kind of an overwhelming day. And I just called my sister and said, hey, let's go for a walk. And went for a walk and I came back and I had no desire for any of it ever again. I still don't today. But for some reason, just yesterday was I really want a piece of pizza day. So
Is it because there's some kind of something going on in your life, some kind of stress, or you're extra tired, or can you make that connection, or is it just random?
it's possible because yesterday I actually was fasting and I usually can fast 20, 22 hours, no problem. But it was at 17 and I was dizzy and I was tired and I was hungry. And it might have that all might have been connected to something that I don't know because I didn't feel that way after I ate and the rest of the day or today. But for some reason, something was off yesterday. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, it's real life, we have our ups and downs.
Yeah.
And and I find it's great that you are able to recognize the cravings, but not necessarily act out on them. Just, well, yes, you act out on them in a healthier way by going for a walk, for example. That requires a lot of self-awareness, maturity. I don't know what to call it, but it's great.
We'll call it mindfulness. I'm working on being mindful because I can acknowledge that it's there, but I can also acknowledge that it won't kill me if I don't eat it. A craving is not a life and death situation. And it's hard to think of that in the moment. You're like, if I don't have it, I'm going to die, but you really won't. And that's where I don't know that I would call it willpower, just acknowledging, hey, that's there. And then saying, but that's not what's good for me. And how am I going to feel after I eat it? I'm not going to feel good.
Yeah, yes, that does. I don't know if it's willpower either. I think actually willpower has a very short lifespan, and that if we rely only on willpower, we're screwed.
Sure.
We've got to have some other tools in our toolbox
Yeah.
to deal with cravings, because they're going to happen. And you can't necessarily, I don't have any anymore because it's been so many years, but in the first couple of years, yeah, definitely. And the thing is not to it's unrealistic to think you're not going to have any, but what you're doing is finding other more healthy ways of dealing with them.
Yeah. I think for me, the walk helps so much. Acknowledging that what it is, reminding myself that it's not a life or death situation, and then doing something to distract myself.
Absolutely. And I think cravings, especially for those junk foods, they're a first world problem in the sense that
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
So easy. I think I could just run over there and get some. It's no problem. It's not a big deal.
It's not like your body's crying out for food because A, it's available everywhere, and B, it's not even food.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you're well nourished at the best of times. Do you find, I don't want to push the issue, but do you find it's some kind of an emotional need, or because it's obviously not a nutritional need?
I've never been able to connect it to an emotional need. No.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I turn to food during emotional times.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe minimally on occasion, but I haven't quite identified honestly what causes that, except just that I know it tastes good.
Yeah.
And it's interestingly enough though, so I stopped eating sugar on December 31st. I just made a goal for myself that for the whole year of 2021, I was not going to have any desserts. Now I eat fruit. I eat bread, not a ton of it, but I do eat it. But I just said no sugar. So, no cakes, no candies, no pastries, no donuts, those things that are all commercially prepared mostly, that really they are delicious, but they don't offer any nourishment at all. And I just made a decision that that's what I was going to do. And in January, I did Whole30. It's modified Whole30. So anybody who's a really Whole30 fan would not agree with me because I did fast. And I just, for 4 hours a day during my eating window, didn't had to deny myself grains, dairy, um, sugar, and beans. And I did that for 30 days and I really had no problems. It was not even difficult at all. Probably because I'd been fasting for almost a year at that point. Actually, today is my 1 year fasting anniversary. I've been
Cool.
fasting for a whole year. And so I'd been doing it for so long that I was fat adapted. It wasn't hard on me. And then when day 31 came, I ate a little bit of, I can't remember what I think I introduced a little sourdough. And I did okay with sourdough. I didn't have any issues. But when I introduced dairy back in about 3 weeks later, I noticed not that it was a problem, but it was a mind problem. If I have dairy, I want too much, especially cheese. So I've tried to limit myself to that. But so anyway, the point is, while I was doing Whole30, there was zero cravings for pizza, for nachos, for anything. But the minute I started adding those back in, some of that cravings popped up again. Not necessarily for sugar. I don't go out and I'm not craving cookies all day or donuts all day. Those are really easy for me, but it's the comfort junk foods that I just know taste good. I love pizza. I love chips and salsa and guacamole. They're like my favorite foods in the planet. And so it's more a mindset of I'm going to miss those. And I allow myself to have those once in a while, but I'm not having them. So when I was started fasting, my reward for making it 20 to 22 hours was either a giant cookie or chips and salsa or nachos. Those were the things I craved so much, and that's what I rewarded myself with. And so my weight loss from last April till December was pretty slow. I lost about 10 pounds in all that time. But once I gave up sugar and dairy, and I haven't given up dairy completely, but it's under control. I lost another 14 pounds in just 3 months. So for me, I believe sugar was really holding me back, but not just sugar. It was trying to take things that mimic sugar or mimic flour and make them into something new. And that's one great thing about the Whole30 plan is there's none of that's allowed. You can't make a pancake out of bananas and applesauce or whatever you make pancakes up, because the idea of eating you're making something fake to pretend like it's something real. And I thought, why have I never thought of that before? So rather than make a muffin out of almond flour and something else that I don't really enjoy, I just stopped eating muffins. And I found
Yeah.
that was easier than trying to substitute, because like I said, food tastes better when you just eat the real thing.
Cool. Yes. And sometimes I say to people, take all the ingredients for a muffin and see if you can eat them individually. And if that kind of turns your stomach, then don't eat them.
Right.
And I'm like you, I didn't try to recreate. After a couple of experiments, I thought, what am I doing? Why am I trying to recreate, foods instead of making a real, fundamental change?
Well, here's the smart thing. My family wouldn't touch them. They'd
Hmm.
pick them up and go, what is this? I'm like, oh, it's delicious. And I'm trying to convince myself that this is a delicious substitute. But in my back of my brain, I'm going, no, it's not. You're lying to yourself. But it's okay because this is a healthy version. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to eat it anyway. And boy, life is freeing now that I just said, why don't I just not eat fake things at all? And they're made with real ingredients. And they're not all fake. The combination wasn't the same as eating a real bakery muffin or a real donut. It was a fake
Yeah.
substitution. This wasn't satisfying to me.
And the irony is that those real donuts and muffins are not even real.
No, they're not.
You're faking the fake.
Mm-hmm. But the fake was, but that was a tastier fake, though. You have to admit.
Well, I'll admit that. I'll admit that in the good old days. And I did the same as you, and I recreated, pancakes and stuff. And like my family was having none of it. They were.
That should have been the real clue. This must not be good. If my husband goes, "Are you really going to eat that?" Really, it's so good. No, it's really not.
Yeah, you weren't convincing anyone.
Nope.
And so I like the fact that you said that you felt it was freeing to just let it go. Let these, fake versions of fake stuff, just let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. And you mentioned before that, you've been fasting, 20 hours a day, more or less, for a year now.
Yep.
And that you are fat adapted. Do you mind explaining what that actually means for you?
What I think it means is that I eat my fat when I'm in that fasted state. So I'm not feeling starving all day long. I'm not shaking. I'm not wanting for nutrients and things because my fat contains plenty of that and my body is eating that, which is what causes weight loss too. So many people who are doing Whole30 um, are letting go of foods that they're well, I can't make a statement on how that works exactly, but there were many people there that said if they were fat adapted, it was easier for them just
Yeah.
because we're not relying on these outside things because we have it in our body already innately.
Yes, when you say your body's eating fat, it means the fat that is stored on your body rather than going into your mouth from food, right? Yes. Yeah, when your body is fat adapted, that's right. It will get its energy from the fat stores that you have on your body, and we all have them, and probably a
Yeah.
little bit too much. And so there is no shortage of energy stored up in your body in the form of fat. And when you give your body a chance to have access to that fat storage, that's what it will use instead of always using foods and glucose from the foods that you eat.
It's really a miracle to me, actually, a miracle, because when I first started, the idea of fasting was I'm going to be starving and tired and exhausted all day long because I had experienced fasting religiously my whole life, every one Sunday a month for 24 hours. And it was always the tired day, the dreaded day. And so when my friend told me about intermittent fasting, I went, why would I do that every day? It's exhausting. But now that I do it, I recognize how much more energy it's the opposite of what you would think will happen, how much more energy I have, how much happier I am. And because I've learned, because of that fat adaptation where I'm eating my fat, not just waiting for the next meal, I'm happily chugging that along. So
Yeah. And how much did you say you'd lost in 3 months?
I've lost 25 pounds in a year, and I think 14 or so of them have just been in the since January.
Without, suffering or denying yourself or anything like that, right?
Well, I didn't. I mean, some people would say I was suffering by denying myself sugar, and I'll tell people. In fact, in one of the intermittent fasting groups, I mentioned that yesterday. I haven't had sugar, and there several people wrote back, "How do you do that? How could you possibly? I could never." And I'm like, well, I didn't think I ever could either. I just made a decision. They said, "Well, tell me how you do. How do you do it?" I said, "You just make a decision." And when I made that decision, every day it's still a decision, right? I just take it one day at a time. But until it doesn't become one anymore, it's not really a decision anymore. It's already decided. I'm not going to have that, and I'm okay with it. I won't die
Yeah.
if I don't.
No, you won't die if you don't eat sugar, that's for sure. Otherwise, I would have been dead 6 years ago. Yeah, and it does make us think that we're going to suffer if we don't eat every 2 or 3 or 4 hours like apparently we're supposed to be. But actually the human body is not supposed to be fed every few hours. It needs that opportunity to regenerate and get its energy from other sources.
Agreed. And also, there's other health benefits too that I've found. I have an experience. I hurt my shoulder real bad, and there's a thing that happens when we fast for a long period of time called autophagy, where our body takes out old cells, gets rid of them. It's kind of like this garbage disposal that will do it. It doesn't work when we're always digesting. And I thought, well, autophagy is also supposed to reduce inflammation. So I'd hurt my shoulder bad. I don't know what, picking apples. And it was like almost like a torn, well, they doctor thought maybe it was torn rotator cuff and it would take months to heal and possibly need surgery. I said, well, let's see if I can hurry this up. And I did a 40-hour fast, which sounds crazy too, but after the first one, they're really not too hard. It's more a mindset thing than anything. Like, I'm going to die, but you're not. And my arm, when I started, I couldn't lift my arm over my head. I couldn't put my shirt on. I couldn't do anything. By the time I finished that 40-hour fast, I was able to put a shirt on. I still couldn't reach behind my back, but I could put a shirt on with very little pain. So I thought, well, I'm gonna do this again. So I had a really good refeed day, and the next day I did another 40-hour fast. And I had gone to see the chiropractor, and he'd done a little bit of work with me there too. So it wasn't just the fasting. I had some other tools. I didn't take any pain medication. And I did another fast, and I could reach behind me. And by the next week, I was perfectly healed. Never had to go back for any other treatment. And I just thought the only thing it could have been was the fact that it's fasting, and what a difference health wise it makes. And I'm sold. So anytime I ever have a pain, I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna do a 40-hour fast. That will go away. And for the most part, it works. So
Yeah, totally. You've understood human biology and the way that the body can heal itself. And tell me, when you talked about refeed, like the day that you eat after a 40-hour fast, can you give us some examples of what you actually eat then?
so I typically don't. I do 6, 7. It just depends. When I'm full, I stop. So I'll usually have breakfast because it's something I usually skip breakfast. So I'll make something with eggs and avocados or something, and then whatever I feel like for lunch. When I do a 40-hour, I'm a little bit more lax about what I eat. So if I'm going to eat a piece of pizza, it's usually going to be after a 40-hour fast. I feel like I'm pretty cool. I can do this. But or if just whatever I'm craving, and it's typically that's recommended to do anywhere from 6 to 12 hours on a refeed day. I don't feel like I ever need 12 hours. I get enough calories, I think, to make up for it in a good 6 to 8. And plus, my I'm really picky with my fasting times because I don't want to feel deprived, and so I hate to have to fast past noon. So I like to start earlier the day before so that I can always have the option if I wish to eat at noon. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I push it longer, but I want to know I could eat at noon. And so I will end that after that 40-hour fast. I'll try to end at least by 3 or 4 so that I can make sure I can eat the next day by noon.
Cool. Yeah. And do you have any, not restrictions, but any kind of foods that you just, apart from sugar, that you just don't feel like eating because they make you feel like crap?
Fast food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had a very, very negative experience with Panda Express. I ate it and said, "Oh, never again," which I didn't used to feel that way. So I just recognized with fasting, I've become more sensitive to maybe rancid oils, omega 6s. Yeah, there's not a single fast food that I've eaten since. And if I do get a pizza or something, it's a high quality pizza. Although I still do have a little bit of a hankering sometimes for Little Caesars. I don't know. Maybe it's a childhood memory. But for the most part, anything I eat out, if I go out to eat, I'm eating at a place where I can see what food they're putting in my food. So it's like a salad bar. In Utah, there's a big push for this burrito bowls or whatever, and you can see exactly what they're putting in. And I like to go to those places because I can see what real food is going in. I can tell them, oh, don't put that in today. I don't think I want cheese today. I'll add some more vegetables today. So yeah, I cannot abide fast food anymore.
Yeah. Isn't that
I
weird?
don't. I'm not sad about that. There's not one bit of sadness for the fact that going to any of those fast food restaurants doesn't sit with me. I'm not sad at all.
Yeah, that's the key, right? I mean, whether you eat it or not, that's one thing, but whether you miss it or not, that's a completely different kind of sense of well-being, right? Same
Yeah.
with sugar, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. That's fantastic to hear. So you're just going to carry on as you are now, I guess, right?
I hope so. My goal was for a year, but like I say, my goal every day is to fast till noon, but sometimes I go beyond. I did let myself do that. So I feel great. I don't miss it. And I think the longer I do it, the less I miss it. There'll be really no reason to go back, right?
Yeah, that's been my experience at least. Yeah, but we're all different, so just
Yeah.
go with the flow.
Well, I enjoyed your podcast a few weeks ago that talked about, are you an abstainer or what was the other word?
A moderator.
Moderate. I think I have to abstain. I think I worry because I've given up sugar for 2-3 months before. I've had different health challenges where we all did a challenge, and it wasn't necessarily for weight loss. It was just a way to be healthier. And I went through. I'm like, oh, I'll never eat sugar again. And then I had one and back on it. So I'm a little nervous actually to see if I did try it again. And part of it is I think the hardest part about giving up sugar for me is that it's just, hey, it's Friday night. Wouldn't it be great to go out and get an ice cream cone with the family? Because those are things we've done in the past. Or everybody on Christmas is going to have our big brunch with the cinnamon rolls. All these things that I won't eat anymore, I feel like I'll miss out not on the food necessarily, but on that experience with everybody. It's going to look different for me from now on.
And the first year is the weirdest, the hardest, I would say, in my experience. But actually, what I found for these kinds of events is that the actual event itself, I'm enjoying, I'm there. I do go with my family for an ice cream. I just don't happen to put any in my own mouth. But it doesn't take away from the fun that I'm watching them have fun eating it, being with them, same thing for Christmas or whatever. It like takes a whole mindset shift to realize, wait a minute, what's really important here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I have learned that my health has nothing to do with my family's eating habits. I'm a separate being from them. And, I haven't made cookies for my kids in 104 days now. And none of them has said, "Hey, Mom, you haven't made us any cookies. Where are the cookies?" Because they know what I'm doing. And I just don't bring sugar home because it's still, I don't think it's a temptation, but it's still, I know what things I don't want to bring. And one thing I cannot do is make them cookies because those are my weakness, right? But they haven't died either. The fact that their mom hasn't baked them cookies.
isn't that amazing? The sky didn't fall on your head. Your kids are still alive. You feel better and slimmer. I mean, yeah. So let's just carry on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So great to hear how you're enjoying what most people would imagine to be a joyless life.
And that was evident by the comments I heard yesterday in my post is, "But why would you do that? I just can't do that." And I was like, well, you can when you decide you can. And it really is a mindset thing, and recognizing that no one else's need of you to be like them or to join in with them affects you. That's not my problem. I want to be the healthiest person I can be. And to be an adult and allow peer pressure to stop me from that, we have to be adults and grown-ups and take decision for our own health.
Totally. There's so much projection going on about sugar. And yeah, as you say, you got to be a grown-up and say, look, this is your thing. I'm doing my thing. Yeah, fantastic. Oh, thank you so much, Janine, for talking to me. Great.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Oh, thanks, Janine. What a great chat. And it goes to show that we're all different. For some of us, eating some artificial sweeteners is fine. It won't trigger us or make us crave the real thing, real in air quotes, because I have to say again, sugar is anything but real. It's just a very highly processed and refined product, but I digress. So yeah, some of us can cope with artificial sweeteners, and some of us, like myself and Janine, are better off without them. And actually, when I started my life after sugar, I spent a couple of weeks experimenting with no sweet tastes at all, which I couldn't have imagined was even possible. But it is possible, and I looked at it as a short-term experiment, and what I found was that my tastes began to change so much that I started finding everything too sweet once I started to bring back sweet foods. So that short-term 2-week experiment, for me at least, ended up being much more long-term. In fact, it's been over 6 years. But again, we're all different, and we need to know ourselves and respect our natural personality and maybe be, open-minded enough to do some experiments and find out what works for us. For Janine, intermittent fasting and not recreating dessert-like concoctions works for her, as it does for me. For you, it might be different. So try it and see. And if you're ready and motivated to get more support, encouragement, and accountability to finally break free from sugar so that you don't need it or miss it anymore, then join us in the After Sugar Club. Go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button, Join the Club. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you're enjoying this podcast and you find that it's helping you in your life after sugar, then scroll down and leave a review and rate the podcast. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast too. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.